Hey, welcome to the book report. Terry Lucas here, author of Color, Thread, and Free Motion Quilting. Learn to Stitch with Reckless Abandon. Oh my goodness. I got notification in Facebook Memories this morning as I'm recording this, which is the day before I'm publishing this interview, that like I was going to do some kind of virtual book tour, live interview kind of thing. And that did not happen for a number of reasons, partly because I was still living in a hotel and all of that kind of thing. Well, I am no longer living in a hotel. And I am loving doing these interviews with people in the industry. And oh my gosh, quilters. Quilters are some of the most amazing people. And today I'm so excited to welcome Lee Chappell Monroe of May Chappell Designs. And I've had Lee on here before. There'll be a link to the interview, our earlier interview. And she's releasing a new pattern, or should soon be releasing a new pattern. And she is just a delight. There is a part in the interview where her dog Agnes kind of takes over telling her own quilt story. We think that's what she's doing. So there may be a section of the interview that looks slightly choppy. And then, oh my gosh, this was hilarious. There is another part of the interview where I am looking for, like desperately, desperately looking for this, the Harris color wheel. I mentioned this and I actually wanted to have it. I wanted to figure out where to get an image of it so that I could include it in my own book. And I, sometimes there are things that you can't do, not because you don't want to do them, but rather because there's just no time to get them figured out. And I was in a moment at that time where I couldn't get it figured out. And so I'll put it up on my blog tomorrow. But I did find, oh my gosh, I was so excited, the Harris color wheel. And I love this. I had it upside down there, which doesn't really matter. I love this for a whole big bunch of reasons. Partly because my maiden name is Harris, but also partly because just having a color wheel, just having something like this that has some history to it in your life, it is actually kind of dynamic. So there that is, and it may pop up again later in the actual interview. And I wanted to share with you, there is a moment where Lee talks about, if you buy the book through her website, which I'm going to put a link in the show notes directly to her website, she's giving away a free pattern with it. I am so excited for her for that. And she said she's not going to take that part down. So if you're watching this in a couple of years, so tomorrow, May 21st, is the pub date for this interview. If you're watching it in 2028, 2029, 2030, she'll still honor that. So there you go, a free pattern. And rumor has it, she might even have a new pattern coming out, which I am so utterly delighted for her for that. And it's actually from the book. I think one of the things that I would really love for you to take away from this interview, as Lee and I talked, is that color is part of who we are as quilt makers. Color is dynamic and beautiful, and how we use it personally is as important as that we use it, right? So take a look at what you wear, what you love, and start incorporating those colors into everything that you do, and you'll be a color genius. Just a color genius. Now, I'm looking around my room right now. It's actually pretty colorful. I have a few quilts on the wall so I can, I can change the background for doing interviews and anything along that line. I have a setup from when I was teaching that has loads of color on it. And truth be told, that was just, I put that up to hide a shelving unit. Smart thing to do. Um, I see all my solids, all kinds of things around here. And the most important thing about color, the seriously most important thing about color is to do what we love. Uh, I think on another episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about my on the fly color wheel. I'm on the fly color class, or maybe I'll do this as an outro. I'm not sure. Well, see, it really did allow quilters that I was working with to become comfortable with choosing colors that worked together for whatever quilt that they were making. And Lee has some really good tips, kind of in the middle of the interview, that really do make a dynamic impact on who we are as quilt makers. So take a good listen. I'm posting, the video will go live on May 21st. So on May 28th, I will choose a winner. So please be sure to comment either here on YouTube or comment on my blog at terrificcreations.com. And I will hold that open for a whole week. So 1 week from the date that I post it here in 2024. And I look forward to more interviews and I have some product and some more books that I'm going to be talking about very soon. So thank you for joining me today, and let's bring in Lee. I want to thank Lee for coming in and joining me today for the book report. It has been a delight to have her here with us. And don't forget that if you order through her site and check the show notes, that she is actually giving away a pattern of your choice on her through her website when you order the book through her. So I will give you a link directly to her, and thank you for joining us today. So I hear you have a new book.
I do. Um,
So my first question is, what's your favorite ice cream? Just kidding. You can answer that.
it's mint chocolate chip,
Oh, there you go.
which my adorable nephew one time asked everyone to take a bite of their ice cream. And most people had, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, whatever. And he took a bite of mine and he goes, Aunt Lee, why would you eat ice cream that tastes like toothpaste? It's my favorite moment of his life. It was the best.
And how old is he now?
He is now in second grade.
Oh, so he's still capable of making delightful comments.
Oh, yeah, he's still a hoot. Yes.
Yes.
But he was probably about 3 or 4 when the toothpaste eating happened.
He has a
And the
point.
irony of it all is he uses that terrifying toothpaste that's like bubblegum flavored. And so I was like, my ice cream doesn't even taste like your weird, gross toothpaste. His mom's a dentist and she's like, do not taste his toothpaste. It's terrible.
Ugh. No, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, it's not great. So
I can't tell you the last time I chewed bubble gum.
why should anything be flavored like that? Like it's not a good flavor. I don't know.
I,
I don't get it.
I don't understand why we liked it as kids either. But
I don't think I did. Yeah, I don't remember being into that. I don't know.
all right, so I'm actually kind of curious. What prompted the book? I mean, first of all, I love it, but what prompted the book?
So I had actually had like this book in my mind for a long time. And I had sort of written another book that I ended up not kind of finishing and, not publishing. And I had sort of taken that book and made it into patterns. Like it just worked better that way.
Okay.
And then I did a book during COVID that was beginning sewing. Um, and this was like the book I always wanted to write. And so
Okay.
after I did the beginning sewing book, I was kind of like, okay, this is the book that like lives in my head. Um, and I think I was very color is my favorite part of kind of art and design is obviously a huge part of my life. And I think it's just a huge passion of mine. It's sort of teaching color was how I sort of got into the quilting industry.
Okay.
And I love sharing color with students. It's my favorite lecture to give when I visit with guilds. It's just sort of it's my favorite topic. And I always say everybody has a color sense. And if you think you're not good at color, you just have to figure out what you're good at about color because everyone does have sort of an innate color sense. But I wanted this book to make color really approachable, and
Hmm.
I wanted it to seem to kind of open up color theory and the more, kind of those, not that there's rules of color, but, the more concrete parts of color, kind of to open those up in really plain terms, which is something I really try to do when I'm teaching is I can make you understand color theory in plain terms. It doesn't matter if you learn all the, technical names and things like that. But this was the book that always sort of lived in my head. And I was like, so I also want to photograph the whole thing and design it myself because I'm a graphic designer. And
Oh, wow.
Galen's amazing and um Amy is amazing. Amy is the publisher at C&T and Galen was my editor for this book. And I'm sure I drove them both insane.
As well
Um
you should. I mean, that's partly your job as an
yeah,
author.
it's like a gift that I like to give the world. Um but I really um, knew exactly how I wanted it to be. And I'm really, really proud of it too. Like it really did sort of achieve my goals. And I joked because they sent me like the final proof, like this is what we sent the printer. And I said to Galen, I was like, I'm just not even going to open it because then I'll find something. And it's just better if we don't know.
No, it like if there's something major, I would just go back to C&T and say, hey, here's this. But
Yeah.
but no,
I
actually,
can't I can't remember what the phrase is right now, so I'm not even going to be able to tell you what it is. But there was a phrase in my first book that's like wrong, and it was one of those things where just nobody noticed. And someone sent it into C&T, and I was like, oh, yeah. And it just proves too, 15 people can be editing the same document and not notice something, but someone out in the world will find it. And
yeah.
I always appreciate when people tell me, especially when they tell with kindness. Um, but there's always something. But I am it did all turn out how I wanted it to. And of course, I've already found a couple things that I'm like, but
You know, first of all, I'm going to say to you, don't be too hard on yourself. Partly because one of the things that I really liked, one of your questions is it dirty? Right.
mhm,
And so you're talking about a color palette that has both black and white in it, making it gray. And it's what percentage of black and white does it have in it to tone it
mhm.
down? And what I really love about that is it gives common language
Yeah.
rather than a technical term.
Yes. Well, when you say to someone, well, that's a tone of green,
They don't
no,
understand what
like
that
nobody
means.
knows what you're talking about. And they also are too intimidated to ask because it sounds confusing. So
Yeah.
to me, yeah, I always love saying, is it a dirty color? Is it a muddy color? Like people have a visual for what color would be muddy or what color would be dirty. Or even, tints or adding white to a color. If you say to somebody, well, is it a pastel version of red? Is it a pastel version of blue? People have a visual for that. People don't have a vision when you say, is it a tint of red? I mean, an artist might, but especially in my teaching, I'm mostly teaching quilters, or people in other mediums. And one thing about this book too is I work in a lot of different mediums. I knit, I do a lot of printmaking, I teach a mixed media class. And so we made it color basics for makers because I wanted it to sort of cross over, to all the different mediums because the information should be attainable to all those different groups.
Mhm.
And I think in the art world, it's even harder. When I teach my mixed media class, I go over the color terms and do the same thing. I say, is the color muddy? Does it look like it's a little bit dirty? You know, that's how you know that that color has gray in it.
Mhm.
And that's much more attainable to someone who's taking a continuing ed mixed media class than is that a tone? So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a great and I'm glad that was your takeaway because that's definitely I was trying to make everything very I'm still going to tell you the word, but it's very plain language and very I also wanted it to feel really conversational because I think sometimes books that especially, color is a big topic, but it is one whole book only on one thing. Um, and I think sometimes it can feel like I'm not trying to get a PhD in this. Like I just want to know a little bit more about it. And so I wanted it to be very readable and feel like I'm just sitting on your couch chatting with you about color.
Well,
Um,
okay, so one of the things that really goes to that is the size of the book. It's not 8.5 by 11,
mhm,
right? It's like this is about the size of one of the journals that I carry in my backpack,
right.
right?
Yeah.
It's also not very thick, but it is jam-packed with a lot of information. And my other favorite feature of this, seriously, is that it is flat lay,
Yes.
which means that it can sit on the table next to anybody who's working and they can very easily go back and reference this.
Well, and it's actually, and kudos to Roxanne at C&T because when I originally proposed this, I really wanted a Wiro bound. And she said, well, why don't we use our reference size?
Yeah.
And it also made me really think of the book as a reference book, because it is.
Yeah.
And I think that that was another thing. There's at the end of each chapter, there's practice and play sections, which
Yes.
sort of take you through, what you just learned. And I give you really practical things you can do around your house. You don't have to start a huge project or, begin a new quilt or something to do the practice and play. It's just gather up a bunch of things that are the same color and try doing this, or gather up, a big pile of things and figure out which colors are dirty and things like that. Um, because I wanted people, I know that most people who are in, sort of the craft hobby world
Hmm.
are visual learners, and most visual learners are much better at actually retaining information once they've done it themselves. When I teach sewing, I always like show you and then I'm like, okay, now you do it because people that, that's just the style of learning that tends to work better for most people in our little hobby world. And so I find that having those little practice sessions, it meant like, okay, you just took in all this information and you're like, yeah, 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 the whole time you're reading it. But then you get to the end and now I'm like, okay, now prove you really, took it
But
in.
but I like that it's also play because
Absolutely. And it's 5 minute things. It's not, we're not talking about like you're going to tear apart your house and 8 hours deep beyond step two. No, like they're
oh,
very simple.
why not? I mean, isn't that the whole goal is like this real solid deep dive into red?
Yeah.
Well, but you can actually do like a little bit of a deep like these are a little bit of those create and plays. Those are the little bit of a deep dive. What do I
Mhm.
have here? Just kind of looking around your home. What do I have here? Go take
Yes.
a quick walk. What can I find? And and the other delightful part of this is that you also did the phone settings. This has been like one since we had digital cameras back in the day when I, you know, we had those little point shoots. We can actually see something on the back, right? Wasn't that exciting?
It really was.
It,
As people who grew up developing film, it really was.
yes, because it was instant. We didn't have to wait to get it
Yeah.
back. But I
Um,
love that. It's like use what here, use what's handy. So your phone camera, right? That it's turn it to the black and white setting. Just
yeah.
and for quilters, we use color value. So how light, relatively light dark is it? That gives us the relatively light dark very quickly, very easily.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
even with those little vignettes that you create, you can also do that little black white thing again and just see what the color values that are already in your home.
Well, and you absolutely could spend a whole day doing all of your practice play. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I
But
mean,
like, all right, need a play day.
yeah,
I'm gonna go grab, I'm gonna go grab color basics for makers and do a quick exercise. Partly because, like, even for those of us who have been in the, kind of teaching color a bit, we still need refreshers. We need those reminders, and here they are, right?
hmm
Here they are. Let you know, let's let's look at a tale of two backgrounds and how your background can actually change the whole look of what's going on.
right. Well, and I think too, the book probably gives people ideas about a simple way to make a big change, which is nice as well. If you're sort of just embarking on quilting, I think a lot of people start out in either like the pre-cut world or they'll buy like fat quarter sets, you know, and I think the book gives you a few ideas of how to sort of be making in that quilting world, but make it really unique to you. Maybe you buy a whole fat quarter bundle, but you pull out 5 fat quarters and substitute in, some from your own stash or from the shop you're in, just to make it a little bit more unique to you. And I think that that helps people have ideas of sort of a simple way to make a big change instead of um it feeling overwhelming the way like, okay, I'm making my first quilt and I have to have 5 yards, of background and I need 3 yards or 3 different cuts that are a third each and 6 different cuts that are a quarter each. And I don't know. And a lot of times people just end up copying the pattern's color palette because they know that they like how that looks. And so that seems like a good choice and it seems safe, but it's not necessarily what they want to do. It's just, it seems safe.
That
So,
was that was actually that kind of conversation is something I really enjoyed doing with quilters in the shop when I was
mhm,
working in quilt shops and I had the opportunity to like do stuff with my customers, and getting them to see, the color that's there. But look, there's a range of color here.
mhm,
You can have a dark green, but you can also have a light green and it's going to work. You
yeah,
can have a dark red, you can have a pink. It's going to work within this color palette because look, it's here. And this can be your inspiration fabric or your inspiration piece can be if it's, quilters, we are sometimes inspired. You don't actually have to use the inspiration fabric in the quilt.
right. It's just your starter.
Right, it's a
Well,
starter.
and one of the sections of the book, I talk about using a photograph, which is certainly not at all a new idea. People love to pull colors from photos, find a photo you love. But one thing I talk about is, okay, you've pulled all the colors, but now we're going to edit them and you're going to decide how much you want to use of each of the colors. It's not just I've pulled every color from the photo and now I'm going to make the exact same thing. You know, the photo might use red as a small accent, but you might say, well, I want red to be my dominant color. So you're still drawing from that image for your project, but you're not necessarily choosing to make it exactly the same. And I think that that's a really um, helpful idea for people because a lot of people are just like, okay, so I have a photo I like, And now I've just picked a bunch of colors, but like what's next kind of thing.
Well,
Um,
and that learning how to edit, it's like learning how to write a good paragraph.
mhm.
It's like learning how to do a blind hem. The first time it looks awful, but the second time you do it because you're not, so much inside your head, it goes much easier. Or the first time you put in a zipper,
Yeah.
right? So the first time is always the hardest. The second time it's a little easier and then a little easier. And it, and that editing piece gives you a little bit of control because you can even down the road before you finish the quilt, you can still make changes.
Well, it also means too, you could use one photograph and get 5 different palettes, 15 different palettes. You
Yeah,
can really make a different choice each time, and it's going to give a totally different aesthetic.
right. Um, was there, as you were writing, was there anything that surprised you?
Um, I mean, surprise, no. I think I knew I was a bit of a nutcase about how I wanted it to turn out.
No, I
Um,
don't think
um,
I don't think you're a nutcase. I think you're somebody who's entrenched in color and has a way of approaching it that makes it not quite so mysterious and you know, oh, I'm not that great of a quilter or I'm not that great of a crafter. I can't do this. Well, you
yeah.
can.
I think that no, I mean, I feel like I said, I feel like it was like the book that I always wanted to write.
Mhm.
Um, so I feel like it went sort of turned out how I wanted it to. And I think with my previous, you know, books, it was like the things that got left out sort of haunted me, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like with this one, I got it all in, that it's not that I couldn't write a whole second book about color because there's always so much more to say, but I sort of felt like it got across all the things I wanted to be sure that it did. So, yeah,
And
I don't know.
it's available now.
It's available now as of today. We scheduled perfectly because today is the day. Today is publishing day.
And just
This will
FYI,
be posted later, but it's April 25th and it's
right?
available today.
Yes. So what's coming next for you? I know you've just launched this, but what's coming next?
I mean, can we have a minute? Um,
Yes.
you know, more new patterns. I mean, traveling and teaching is big. Um, this year I taught on my first cruise, which I loved, and so I'm doing that again next year. So
Good,
if you want
good.
to cruise and talk about color in Alaska in June of 2025, let me know. Um,
Let Lee know because she needs people.
yeah, so it would be great. But yeah, so that's kind of more, I mean, I hate to say more of the same because I do feel like it's always different, but
Well,
lots of teaching, lots of traveling.
when you teach a class, you can teach this over and over again, and the class is going to be a bit different because there are different
It
human
is.
beings
Yeah. Well,
in.
and in fact, my mom and I joke because my mom will travel oftentimes with me if I'm going um basically somewhere she wants to go. That's how it usually works out. Um, but she's amazing. She helps me out so much with my business. But she's probably seen my color lecture like 20 plus times
Right.
and she'll still come out and be like, I don't think you've ever said that before. Blah, 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 and like rattle off some little thing. And I'm like, really? Because and like I said, I could write a whole other book because it's sort of a topic that I feel like I have so much to say about.
Mhm.
So every time I do a lecture, there's some core things that are always part of it, but there absolutely are some surprises.
Well,
Um,
that's part of your own growth as a crafter, yes?
mhm. And I think too, it's the part of um, like when I speak, I occasionally work off like a really loose outline, but I never work off anything that's like verbatim. So you're laughing at my loose outline.
Uh,
I jot I
no,
jot down five to six
that
words.
No, I'm not laughing at you. I'm actually laughing with you because I do the same thing. Like,
Yeah, it's just, and so it changes each time, but I think that that is more enjoyable. It makes it more real.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
I'm doing, um, I am doing my color lecture actually on Creative Spark, which is, the online
yeah,
teaching. And so you can go and watch the lecture there. But I feel like even if you've seen it a different place, like it would be a different experience. That
yeah,
one obviously will be recorded, so it will live the same, you
right.
know. Um, but it is every time I say something different. And I do also like a tips lecture, and that one I flat out change out the tips. So it does end up drastically different each time. But
What are your top three tips? Or actually, forget the top three. What are your three favorite tips for color?
color related. Okay, so one of my favorites is if you look at a selvage and where like the ink colors are printed, if it's bright white, then the colors are most likely going to be pure and vivid and heavily saturated. And if it's creamy, then the colors are most likely going to be muddy or dirty. And that's
Mm,
not always 100%. Sometimes they like to fake you out and it's a white selvage, but they've printed a bunch of cream on it. But generally, it's a good, you know, rule of thumb. And also, if you put a bunch of bright white selvages together, even if they're from all different fabric lines and all different designers, there's a good chance they'll look good together. Um, Another one of my favorite tips is don't sort your scraps by color, sort them by type of color. So I keep my scraps where I keep all my pure saturated colors together. And then I keep all my colors that are a little dirty or a little muddy. And then I keep my colors that are like a little bit muddy, sort of in the middle. And if you don't make a big jump, you can still mix those colors. So some pure saturated colors might go with a little bit dirty,
right.
or a little bit dirty might go with really dirty.
Hmm.
Um, but you don't really want to jump all the way from pure saturated to really dirty. That doesn't look as good. If you've ever seen a scrap quilt and you're like, that's usually because they used every single color, those are, colors go well together
They do.
because you have some colors that are a little bit dirty and then you have some that are more pure and vivid. So you haven't made giant leaps, and that's why that looks really nice. Yeah, like that's the secret. Because probably people look at that quilt and I bet the first thing they say is, "Oh, I would have never put those colors together."
This one doesn't travel so much, so
Okay, but if it
yeah,
did, I bet that's a comment you would get. Um, and the truth is because you're not making giant leaps, it still works.
right, right. You can
So sorting your
more,
scraps that way, no, I don't know. Well, and this is sort of, I don't know if I would call it a tip, but it's one of my favorite little tricks with color, is you don't always have to use color in a really obvious or large area. Like this one is actually in the book. There's a book or a quilt I made that's red and white, and red's split complementary colors are blue, green, and yellow, green. And
right,
instead of quilting it with like white thread or something like that, I quilted it with blue green thread. And then the background fabric has sort of blue green lines on it. And I bound it in lime green. And so the whole quilt all together, it's just a red and white quilt. But by adding that blue green and yellow green, it really pumps up the color of the red. Are you frantically looking for it?
yes, I was. However, comma, uh,
Okay. I was gonna say I can flip for it. We'll keep chatting, but I will. Oh,
here.
here it is.
Okay, I
See? We're good. I still have Agnes in my lap, so there we go.
think I saw that really quickly as I was flipping through.
Yeah. But so it's sort of a hint of the blue green, but no one would look at that quilt and say that quilt is red and blue green and yellow green.
No, I love that very directly. You're pointing to the fact that color has like when we are looking at something, the color has layers. It's not always quite so obvious, but when we sit with when we are looking at something, we can begin to see what the layers are. And the quilting might be subtle, and I know you and I quilt very differently, the quilting may be actually subtle, but it's giving a richness and a depth and kind of something to like there's a little something extra there that
Right.
that just adds to the overall. And but by knowing that, knowing not only what the complement but the split complement is, it gives you a richer, it gives you more color to play with in.
Well, and I think too, using quilting as your color is underrated in quilting. It's and Terry wrote a whole book about it, so y'all can
I did.
you did. But it's a really valuable tool, and I think a lot of people are just like, I'm gonna use medium gray.
Right.
And trust me, I use plenty of medium gray, so don't get me wrong.
Yes, I think you
But
mentioned that in our last interview.
yeah, but I think that it is a really cool way to sort of have something, pump up the color for you and have sort of a secondary. And it's not something you're going to see from far away. It's going to be something that's appreciated much closer up.
Right.
Um, because I also always talk about, well, what color does it read as, because a lot of fabrics have multiple colors in them. It might be an orange background with big blue flowers, but from a distance, all you see is the blue flowers. The orange background becomes irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
But when that fabric is close up, those are complementary colors. So that orange is pumping up that blue. And so that becomes a factor in your design, but it's also the blue is really the color that is dominant in what you're working on. So,
Mm-hmm. Have you, how do you, okay, so you wrote on what we've traditionally understood as the red, blue, yellow color wheel. Have
mhm.
you seen and have you dived into the CMYK?
Well, so I worked in the graphic design world,
Okay.
which works in CMYK, like that's the printing world uses CMYK. Um, and it's still really similar. Um, so it's, like cyan just equals blue and magenta equals red and yellow gets to still be yellow. So it's like it's a similar world. When people start asking about like color palettes with light and things like that, I start panicking. Um,
I
but
can't imagine
I
you panicking.
but I think that yeah, I don't really panic. That's true. My version of panicking.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, fair enough.
Agnes is like, I'm up, mom's panicking. Um, but I think that when you're looking at like different types of color wheels and different types of palettes, one thing you have to really think about is that the same concepts still work.
Right.
Like you're working with different ones. I have a friend who's a biochemistry professor and she teaches a class about like natural dyes, sort of, natural dye and chemistry called Dying to Learn Chemistry, which I think is really clever. And she asked me to give my color lecture to her class. And it was sort of me with a bunch of scientists. But one thing I think was interesting because they were sort of asking about the different types of color wheels and but they were sort of asking about the different types of color wheels. Now y'all will get to see how much I talk with my hands normally. And there are all these different types of color wheels and all the different ways, that color reacts to light and which one makes up a rainbow. The same concepts sort of work. And I think that's part of, when I was talking about it sort of being an attainable version of color theory, because I was approaching the book very much from the art world's version of a color
Okay.
wheel. One of the things you do when you're a beginning art student is like paint a color wheel and you sort of are given red, blue, and yellow, and they're like, make a wheel, good luck. I think you do get black and white too. So you can,
Which would actually make a whole
yeah.
lot of sense.
Yeah, and you make the whole thing, but understanding how to mix colors and how to sort of create all those things does give you a more thorough understanding of color theory, but we're sort of not looking at making the colors, we're looking at using the colors. So
Mhm.
to me, it's less important which wheel is our basis, if that kind of makes sense.
It actually does. You know how you hear these things, right? It's this, this is the old way of doing things. You need to come into the new way of doing things
Oh, okay.
because your old way,
Am I old way? I like to be a little vintage, so
you are actually classically.
okay.
You're
I'm class.
totally classic.
I like.
Everybody has their own thing. When I was writing color thread and free motion quilting, I wish I had figured out how to get permission to do this because my maiden name is Harris and there's an actual Harris color wheel.
Oh,
And I actually found one and bought it. I just need to hang it. I need
I
to.
mean, where is that puppy? It should be up right now, in case she doesn't edit this out. Hello, friends. We have not found the Harris color wheel.
In
A
on the
picture will
bottom.
be appearing now.
But it was really it was fascinating from the standpoint of instead of going through, I think there were a couple of like big differences in terms of how this guy put the color wheel together. But again, it's another version of a tool that makes it useful. Do you have a current favorite fabric line that you are, or actually, let
Oh,
me rephrase the question. Which actually, so it was do you have a particular line of solids that you use?
so I really love Andover's
Okay.
solids. I also really love Free Spirits,
Okay.
and I love them for the same reason. To me, they have unique colors. Like
Okay.
they're not trying to create a rainbow. And Free Spirit, especially, like they go with their lines. Like I love like the Tula Pink solids that go with the Tula Pink line. I love like Denise Schmidt had a giant box of solids and I loved those solids. So I really like the idea of kind of solids, but I love how Andovers feel. I love their colors.
Mhm.
Um, so those are probably the two I like the most. Um, but my I'm not a huge solid user, but my solids are right there. Um,
I, I,
and
oh, that is far less than I thought that you would have.
I know it's because I like prints.
And conversely, I think I have more prints, but I have a lot of solids because I love them as backgrounds.
See, I love a print as a background. I mean, I use both,
We
but
use background very differently. Like for you,
you
it
want your quilting to show. I want my quilting to be hidden. This is the difference, Terry.
nailed it. Uh, so it is different. It is a completely different
Sorry about Agnes.
use of color. It, is there anything like um I know I was delightfully surprised because I wasn't sure how it was going to end up looking. But when I did the color wheels for the thread color wheels for color thread and free motion, I was delightfully surprised sometimes with depending on what the background was, what colors popped out and which colors went into the background. First of all, I really love that I was still surprised by that. But I also love that I could get, you know, more solids, grab see if I could ever find the same threads, or just make a collection of threads and do them on different backgrounds just to see how the color plays.
Oh, that would be interesting. Yeah.
But you actually do that within a pattern by simply changing where the color is. You get
Yeah.
a whole different feel for a design.
You do. You get and how much you use of a color,
Mhm.
which also you could change through the density of your quilting.
Do you have new patterns coming out to companion the book?
I there might be a surprise one coming soon.
I know a really great place to debut patterns.
Where's that? Oh. I will give a hint.
Yeah. Ooh, ooh. Is it in your book? Sweet. Ooh, ooh. That'll be a great pattern. That'll be a
Secrets coming soon.
yay. We love secrets here on the book report. Here on the book report. One final question. When you're in
Okay.
your sewing room stitching, what are you drinking? And I know I'm not asking
I'm
alcohol.
so boring. Water. I'm sorry. I'm so boring.
You drink what you drink.
I know.
You drink what you
Mhm.
drink.
Sorry about
You
it.
know, being in North Carolina, I would have thought, I actually would have thought,
You were hoping tea, weren't you?
not just tea.
Sweet tea. I'm gonna further ruin your world. I don't even I don't like sweet tea. I think it's terrible. My my mom says that they're gonna take away my Southern card because I don't like grits. I don't like sweet tea. I don't particularly like barbecue. I don't like slaw.
You know, I think this is actually the most fun part of the conversation. How Southern is Lee?
I'm losing my Southern card.
No, I no. You may not like barbecue. North Carolina barbecue, from what I understand, is mustard based. Is that right?
Well, it's either mustard or vinegar. We have two kinds, Eastern versus Western.
Right.
But I grew up in Texas and I really don't like Texas barbecue. I know. I know.
I'm enjoying Texas barbecue a lot.
Okay.
We have a place right here in town. So with that, Lee, do you have any final
Agnes
thoughts?
is apparently ready for her evening stroll or her pre-dinner.
Apparently, do you, before you go, do you have any final thoughts? Is there something special from the book that you want readers?
Well, so I have been on the book report and seen the book report before. And so I expected to get a question about my dedication, and I did not.
Oh,
Did you skip it?
I did not.
You're a reader of dedications, which is something I love about you. Um,
Well, okay, so the dedication this time, and I actually did read it, but I read it on the PDF format, and so
oh,
like it's
it's been a minute.
yes, it's been a minute because it was like a week and a half ago. The colorful pages are dedicated to the original PUD, parental unit dad, aka Jim, who painted my childhood bedroom graceful grape. Oh my gosh, I loved that. Like he just went for it. And
I
what
picked it, obviously.
but you know what? He didn't stifle. He didn't
He
just
did he did come home from the paint store and say the dude at the paint store laughed at him.
and once asked me which two colors make green. Everyone assumes my artistic talent comes from mom, but I know how much your creativity and support have influenced my career. Your color knowledge would probably benefit from doing the practice and play worksheets.
I
I
mean, they
love
would.
this.
I'm just calling it like it is.
I'll be waiting for on a full report. I love that. I love that. I love that you put that out to your dad. Like, dude, yeah, work to do.
Homework.
Sexy. Oh my gosh. I okay, so my apologies for not bringing that up before
It's
now.
all right. I just expected it.
Well, yeah, I'd like to change it up sometimes too. You know what? I actually this again, this actually sets the expectation that this is going to be a lot of fun. Like we really shouldn't take ourselves so, like we need to take color seriously, but it doesn't need to be as, you know, super serious. It can be serious, playful. It can be
Yes. Well,
right.
and no, I think that it is. That's it's also how I approach teaching, that like you should be having fun while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Um, this isn't brain surgery. We're here to have fun.
Mhm. Right. And well, and that is actually more the point. We are here to have fun. And you know, if you want to paint your bedroom graceful, great. If we can find that color combination
It's
in your
about this color.
ooh. So, you know, I would actually paint my sewing room. I actually want to paint my sewing room pumpkin orange.
Oh, I like that. Well, I was going to say for the Texans, the guy at the paint store did tell my dad that it was the same color that Stephen F. Austin bought for their stuff. So if you look up Stephen F. Austin, it's that color purple. But it was a lot for a childhood bedroom that was 10 by 10.
Yeah, that's, one of the things that we do like about Texas is everything is bigger, including our rooms.
Except for my room, apparently, which was miniature. Um,
That is
but
smaller. That is smaller, but it's still, you know what? That kind of color can be a little bit
well,
overwhelming.
I toned it down with the next painting when I did a bright teal with white sponge paint.
Ooh,
Yeah,
yeah,
excellent choices were made.
very much so. Very much so.
Well, thank you. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really sorry everyone had to listen to my barking dog.
It's Lee, it's fine. It's fine.
Hopefully, it's not as loud to y'all as it is to me.
It's probably not because for most of it, I haven't really heard her. But
Okay.
you know what? Thank you again for coming. I really love chatting with you. I love your patterns. I love the story behind the name of your company, and I just think that you were so delightful. And congratulations
Aw,
on this book.
I love you too, my friend. Thanks.
So everybody, go buy this. Add it, yes.
And I was going to say, if you buy it on my website, you get to pick a free pattern to offset the shipping. So,
Oh,
and you get to pick it, a pattern of your choosing.
oh
So,
boy, I can't wait to put that in the show notes.
so
What's your time limit on that?
I'm
Like,
not going to take it off. I'm going to leave it
okay.
on.
All right,
Yeah.
perfect. All right. So thank you again for joining us and thank you for joining us at the book report.
Thanks so much.
Welcome. I want to thank Lee for coming in and joining me today for the book report. It has been a delight to have her here with us. And don't forget that if you order through her site and check the show notes, that she is actually giving away a pattern of your choice on her through her website when you order the book through her. So I will give you a link directly to her and thank you for joining us today.